Welcome to A Breath of Fresh Career. This is season 2, episode 4. My guest today is a gentleman by the name of Jason Meyenburg. Jason is the CEO of a biotech company by the name of Gemini Therapeutics. Jason, he's a father, 3 daughters, a husband, a dog owner. He's an avid skier. He'll probably blush when I say this. The guy's a gourmet chef, and he's a master at the grill as well as an overall athlete. Welcome to the show, Jason. I'm psyched to be chatting with you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Where are we catching you today? Where in the world, in the country, are we catching you?
At our dining room table in Vermont, actually, in Ludlow.
Okay.
With 2 out of the 3 kids doing remote schooling today, so it might get a little bit noisy.
That's all right. Everybody's doing the whole remote school thing.
Exactly.
Tell us about Gemini Therapeutics and what you guys do in your own words.
Yeah, we are as you said, we're a biotech company. We're what's called a clinical stage company. So we are in the process of putting drugs into clinical trials, with the aspiration to get them approved and available for use by the common public. And we are concentrating on what's called precision medicine. And the way we've started doing that is working in a population of people who have a disease called AMD, age-related macular degeneration. It's the largest single cause of blindness in the US and in the Western world.
Wow.
And, what's really very interesting that the company, has taken the opportunity to move forward and build a drug against is that about 40% of people, of the 16 or so million people in the US with AMD, have a very specific mutation in your immune system. And what we're trying to do is give something back therapeutically that would compensate for a loss of function that these patients have. So I think it's amazingly cool. And it's part of what attracted me to Gemini is that we're taking such a huge public health topic and issue and trying to bring the right medicine to the right person, rather than sort of thinking about aspirin for the masses, which has its place and is very important. But we think that this is just, a great way to try to bring a better medicine to people, to be honest, Jess.
That's amazing. That's great. What, now you're the CEO over there.
Mhm.
Tell us what the day, we got a lot of listeners that love to hear from CEOs. Like, what's the day in the life? Tell us what you do every single day.
It's people, right? It's a constant throughout the day, and it's working with and listening and interacting and building things and, bottoming out on topics with lots of different types of people, whether they be, I was a little late to this call, apologies, because I was on with our clinical development team thinking about, late stage development and
a little bit more important than a podcast.
No, I don't think so. I actually think that's there's importance and there's urgency, right? But in general, I can't think of any people, right, who aren't important, right? So it's really, I think, critical in this role to get a snapshot from, this podcast, to get a snapshot from clinical developers, from investors, whatever it might be. I think it helps us build our view together and, really keeps us focused on, understanding what's important and why when we're trying to bring a drug to the marketplace.
Now you talking about drug, biotech is in your DNA. You know what I'm saying? You got to start a long time ago, kind of like in biotech. I think we first met when you were over at Alexion. You worked your way up in the ranks. Yeah. Tell us how you got your start.
I was in college and I had an aspiration to be a physician. And at some point, I just decided that wasn't what I wanted for lots of reasons. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I got a summer job. A professor in college, was like, hey, do you need a job this summer? This pharma company needs some quality control people in the lab, and it pays well and you're qualified and I think you should try to get an interview. And I liked it right away. I'm not sure. QC is a critical part because basically you're testing is the product of the right quality that we can put it into people, so it's absolutely critical. But I learned a ton from that job, just listening to what's going on, seeing things that I didn't understand. I just didn't have any exposure to, and I wanted to learn more. It was fascinating, what it took, to get something out of the pharmacy when you bring it home in your little white paper bag and in a bottle. I enjoyed it right away, Jess. I don't know how else to put it.
That's awesome. You look at your background. You've lived in various places in the world. You've been on the commercial side, commercial end of biotech. Now a CEO. Like, what's one thing you wish you had known before you began your career in this biotech world?
Only one?
Yeah, just one. Just give us one.
I think everybody, you have to rely on everybody wants to do the same thing, right? Which is a really good thing in this. Look, I mean, here's the thing. In the life sciences and the biotech sector, it's a huge privilege because when you wake up in the morning, you have one job, and it's to get a better drug to the marketplace, to people who need it, and there's other parts of that too, right? Where, as a public company, we have to make sure we symbiotically build value because these investors, right, they entrust us with their capital, and they entrust us to build better drugs faster sometimes, and to do a great job of it. And if you don't do these two things together, it just doesn't work. The company's not successful, the drug's not successful, et cetera. But everybody wants to do that when you wake up. And, the sooner you realize that, and it's not because you think people are against you, but rather, how do we harness together all these people, right, who have this common purpose and want to bring the best product to the market possible? The faster you can realize that, I think, just the more we can accomplish together, to be very honest. I mean, and it's a wonderful feeling. It's a great feeling, I don't know, today, closing up the laptop and walking away from Zoom, but it's a wonderful feeling at the end of the day saying, we did it today. We took a big step forward today, or we passed a challenge today. And it's the we, I think, it's both rewarding, and it's something it's not always apparent, in your career when you're 22 out of school or something like that.
Jason, what you're saying, I mean, it applies to every organ, every effort, every company. I mean, absolutely. I mean, not everyone's saving lives, but, a lot of other tech companies that I talk to and CEOs that I speak with, it's kind of that same, trying to get everybody to kind of march in the same beat or, sing from the same hymnal. With COVID and craziness, we're talking to you in Ludlow, Vermont.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing now with regards to COVID and like being remote? I mean,
a lot. I mean, but a lot of the same too. It feels like, we do a lot of this, back and forth on Zoom. Folks have been going into the labs. Really, they actually never stop going into the labs, right? There's some work that we do in the labs that if we stop, it might take another 6 months to restart it and get back to where we want to be. Because we rely on cells and organisms and things like that. But, I feel like there's been like 3 phases almost of this situation that we're in. The first one at the beginning, oh my, what's going on? And, you're just frantically trying to determine, how do I keep interacting with people and keep the business moving forward? I think the second phase, we said, hey, you know what, we can do this. And we are advancing the business and we're being successful. And as much as we'd love to be in the office and see each other face to face, we can do this. I think we're in a third, at least for us at Gemini, we're in a third phase where we know we can do this, but boy, people are fatigued, and I snickered at the beginning or just after you asked the question, Jess, because yesterday we had an all hands call, all the employees, we get together on Zoom, and we heard this fatigue, and we said, okay, what are we going to do to change this a little bit? Because otherwise it's 24/7 on your phone, on a device, on a laptop. It's really tiring. And I think, we suffer as people, as humans, if we don't address it somehow.
By the way, it's the same thing the kids are going through with.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, the kids are done with remote, Jess. I mean, the kids, right? And they're this week it came to a head, and we had a lot of family conversations at dinner. Same thing happens in the office. It doesn't matter if you're 12 or 13 or if you're 43 or 53.
100%. What? So how'd you get into Gemini?
I was talking with a really well-known venture capital firm, and had started building a relationship. And we were talking about, Jason, well, what kind of ideas do you have if you were to start a company? And one of the individuals, I'd worked with him for a long time. One of the sort of my mentors, if you will, and just really well-respected person. And they phoned me up and said, hey, would you work for an already operating company? I said, yeah, I mean, first of all, you didn't offer me a job, so I have nothing to say yes or no to. But I said it'd be ridiculous if I didn't, try to understand more. And, so we started some dialogue, and I started doing my homework about what was Gemini doing, and, related to what we were talking about a minute ago. And I said, yeah, look, if you want me to sign up, I'd really like to sign up. Great investor syndicate. I met parts of the management team. It felt like they had, a forthrightedness and a passion that I think could, help carry the company forward. And that was, summer into early fall 2019, I guess.
Amazing. That's great. All the pieces need to come together, and the people, the tech, right? The overall opportunity. What, so when you joined Gemini, it was a private company.
Yes.
And you took the company public, in 20, and if I remember,
about literally a month ago today, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this the first company that you've taken public, and tell us about the experience and what that all means?
It's the first company where I was the CEO, and this is the first time I'm a first-time CEO. I was with a company, actually the prior company, was part of the IPO process, but certainly not leading it per se. So this was a very different personal experience for me. Yeah, for sure. I guess, I don't know if that helps, Justin, but maybe are there things you think that you want to understand more, or others want to understand more?
Well, I mean, you hear about it, right? You hear about the 7 days a week, telephone
Sometimes,
calls in the middle of tennis matches, and like who'd you work with specifically to take? Did you guys file through a SPAC? Because that's like the new trend right now. And what does that even mean for our listeners?
Yeah, so we did. We merged with a SPAC to become public. And what that means is that there is a, sorry, the dog almost pulled out the charger on the laptop here. A SPAC is, it's not a new thing actually, but it's fairly new to biotech by and large. A SPAC itself is a public company. Some people might call it a shell company, but basically there's a sponsor who brings in investors and pulls in a certain amount of capital. And they say, hey, as a sponsor, we're going to go look for target companies, private ones to merge with that we think are interesting and are going to return value and, inflection in the stock price back to you as investors. And in this instance, the SPAC was a company called Foresight Development Corporation. And they're a very sophisticated and very successful investor in the biotech and the life sciences space. We met last summer approximately, and over time, they then priced their own SPAC or created their SPAC. They were the sponsor, and they said, hey, Gemini, we're really interested in you. Here's a term sheet. I'm obviously oversimplifying here a little bit, but here's a term sheet, and we really want to merge with you and help bring your organization public and capitalize you. We think that you have a great future, and believe that you're a fantastic public company offering.
I was talking to another client last week who's thinking about kind of doing the same thing.
Okay.
I mean, they're like, I don't know, for all intent purposes, $45 million companies,
Okay.
60, 70 people in the e-com space. Really kick-ass technology company and subscription and all that stuff. But, like, so if you were talking to a guy like that, another CEO, who has worked for public companies, but maybe hasn't gone through this whole SPAC thing, what kind of advice would you give the guy like that before he jumps in?
I mean, I think there's practical advice and then there's sort of strategic advice, right? The practical advice is SPACs are maybe a little bit faster than, sort of the traditional IPO process. But if anyone tries to tell you it's simpler, easier, nothing in life that is great is simple and easy all the time, so it's going to be challenging, complicated, intensive hours, and, a lot of parties involved. The strategic advice, and this is where, the conversation at the board level over a few months really was, do we want to merge with the SPAC as opposed to a traditional IPO? And we felt there were clear reasons why that was a yes. And then the other strategic point about this is not all SPACs are the same, right? So each SPAC has a different set of investors. They have different fundamental interests as investors, and they're not always aligned to the target company. I think one of the great things that we saw, I mean, Foresight is now priced other SPACs at this point, since all this has happened. And one of the great things that we saw with the Foresight Development Corp SPAC was they just had an absolute A-list of long life sciences oriented investors. And that meant that we had a great audience at the outset, who understood the business, who wanted to get into the science and also ask, hey, what's the probability of success? Why are you different? Why are you better? And those were all really important, compelling things, because it's not often you really get a chance to try to pick your investors. And I think, there's a lot, even great investors beyond the ones who were in the SPAC. But it was such a great start for us. I think fundamentally, we were resolutely, on the right path to merge with a SPAC.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Sounds to me like it's almost like an immediate network, full of advice.
In a way it is, but, you still have to make sure that you're transparent and able to demonstrate progress and value growth too, right? I mean, because you start there, but that's not where you finish too. So
no doubt. You're on a breath of fresh career, and part of the reason why I put this together was because, during the beginning months of COVID, I mean, there were a lot of people out there looking to make change and get into their own business. And, this podcast is really designed for advice, and for people to hear stories and take little snippets of those stories. Part of what I ask is about, especially folks like yourself who are hiring and who have hired, et cetera, what you look for. And let's talk about some of the key characteristics you look for when you're, interviewing folks. And it could be in general, it could be anybody. I mean, like, what are some of the first things you identify as key characteristics?
I guess maybe the first thing to think about is, like, everybody has a resume, right? And some people's resumes are better constructed than others, for sure. But, there's a few fundamental things. It's certainly what have you done, and what are you looking to do now, and what have you accomplished, right? Because it's one thing to say, I worked at company X when something was happening, but if you're able to say how you helped bring that project, that product, that company to success, I think it speaks volumes. But really the next step is how, and when you talk with people, you're listening for simple things like, how often do we use the word I or me versus we and us, and it's not a bad thing to use I, but it's got to be done, I think, for clear reason, so we did this, here's how I contributed, for instance, right? And those are like simple things, I suppose, but I think it's also in our psyche. And when you're listening to folks and asking questions in an interview, and even answering their questions, I think it goes to, okay, so once this person's in the company, in Gemini, right? How do you feel they're going to fit? How do you see them navigating the company? How are they going to work in this Zoom life that we have, you know? And because like the idea of onboarding is everything we learned until 2020, a lot of it is, you know, altered, I would say. It's not useless, but it's altered. And so that how, it's of paramount importance, Jess. And, you know, honestly, there's a lot of time and work invested in the area of behavioral interviewing and so on, but there's a reason. Because, you know, we don't want a wake behind people. We want, you know, everybody in the boat. And because, you know, we're not the same size companies that we used to be. You know, we deploy capital differently, and everybody becomes so critical that, you know, look, Gemini's 30, 40 people, so we're not that big. It makes everybody, if we had one person on a percentage basis, that's a big deal for us.
Rowing the wrong way.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. And it has impact on the other 30, 40 people too, right? So that how is it's just critical. It's critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear it all the time. You know, let me ask you, just so I can make sure I understand, the wheeze in the eyes. Is that something that you can see in a resume or on a LinkedIn profile, or both, or is that something you have to pick up when you're talking to them?
Yeah, I think if it's really egregious, you know, if someone's like, I accomplished all this, and it makes it look like they did it themselves, you can definitively see it on a resume or a profile, you know, LinkedIn. I mean,
yeah.
I think when you're listening and you're talking with people though, right? Like I said, it's not bad to use I. It's good to use we, but you got to know why you're doing it, you know. And it is also easy to pick up on. It's much easier to pick up, I think, in conversation, if I'm getting your question right.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. One of the other questions I ask folks like yourself, who have made it, you know,
we work on making it every day.
I'm trying. It starts when we get up, right? Influential folks in your life, man. Are there some folks that have influenced you? You mentioned somebody who you were.
Yeah. He's the former chair of the board. Person named Steve Squinto. That's who I was referencing earlier. Wonderful person, you know. Yeah, I mean, tons of folks, you know, from family and friends of family, and even friends, you know, similar age. You know, you admire people for the things that they bring to the world, you know, and how, and again, it's the how, you know. I mean, my grandfather, my mom's dad is, you know, was and remains in my mind and my memories, you know, one of the most wonderful people on the planet. He had an ability to lead and invite everybody to participate. And I can't ever think of anyone who didn't admire him. And, you know, the mentors that we have in our professional lives, yeah, it's similar. I mean, you know, none of us are perfect, but I remember, you know, you referenced, I worked for Alexion, some phenomenal mentors there. You know, helping me understand how to do things and how to ask the most of people. And, you know, and sometimes you learn those lessons after you work with them too, right? It sinks in a little bit as we mature. There's just been a lot of them: CEOs, heads of R&D, heads of commercial, you know, sales reps in the field, regional marketing people. I mean, there's just so many of them, superior, peer, subordinate. And I don't know, Jess. I mean, I think that's why part of the reason I really enjoy my job is that having the opportunity to meet and talk with all these people and be a translator and a person who helps bring all this together, you know, and allows people to be themselves and contribute to something that we have in common. Like you said, it's irrespective of the industry or the sector that we're in.
That's awesome. So COVID, remote, Zoom, the whole deal, CEO, team, 40 people, could be 40 people, could be 400 people.
Yeah.
How are you motivating your team? How do you motivate your team today?
I mean, I'd love to tell you it's because there's a cold brew coffee maker in every Gemini employee's house right now. I mean, that's not a bad thing. And if not, it's a little bit of caffeine in the morning too. But, I think it's reaching out, and asking others to reach out too, and, the thing when you're in the office, right, somebody knocks on your door, you make time, you pass somebody in the hallway, in the kitchen, you make time. That's not top of mind all the time. It's
Yeah, especially in the go, go, go world. It's
yeah. And so you got to really make it part of your world, put it front of mind and ask everybody to do that. And if not ask, really insist everybody do that, because, there've been some pretty low times for folks, and, not all of us have 3 kids and married and have a dog and, the chaos of that household, right? There's a lot of folks who live alone, and that's a tough prospect. There's a lot of folks who have challenges financially and medically and so many ways. And so you just gotta find a way to reach out, I think, and make time for that, to be honest.
That's, you look at both sides of the coin, man. It's that's great. It's a great way to look at it. Great outlook. What are you seeing in the industry? What's next?
Oh, in certain ways, COVID's been a kind of it's caused a big inflection, or there's an opportunity for biotech to take on and keep the fire going for a big inflection point. I think, as an industry, there's always some things we can do better. A lot of people equate pharma and biotech with, lots of great, new drugs. It's also an expense for me. And I think it's wonderful to see a few companies here do a fantastic job to develop and get a vaccine to people in less than a year. Couldn't even tell you how phenomenal and amazing it is. I mean,
wow.
It's beyond a once in a lifetime thing. I mean, these are, typically it's nearly a decade that most drugs take to get to market.
Is what happened with this vaccine? Do you think that is going to change the clinical trials process going forward for other manufacturers? I mean, or was this one just strictly based off a necessity? I mean, of course there are listeners out here that need a drug that's not through trials yet. So it's a necessity for them. But I wonder if
I actually think, Jess, it's been a trend, I think, for a little while now, right? In the US, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, that reviews and approves drugs are not, suitable for human use and animal use for that matter. They have shown a lot of progress in being open and a partner with industry. And, a partnership means that industry has to participate in that too. And I think so, because the FDA has changed the way it's worked, they have to learn how to do that. And we also have to learn how to do that. So I think actually what we have seen now with, Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, and now recently, J&J, getting vaccines approved, and, hopefully others like Novavax too. What we're seeing is the regulator, the FDA, the company figuring out that partnership for a public health imperative, right? And otherwise catastrophe. But I think there's lessons learned here. Hey, we can bind this partnership even more tightly. And, it's part of our job as industry to figure out how to participate in that. And, for instance, precision medicine, we're hoping that we can find new ways so that we could structure clinical trials differently, or do them more quickly, or interpret data more clearly with the FDA, so that we could get to an approved product faster. So I think it's here to stay. If anything, it's going to be, how do we do this? How do we do more of it at this, breakneck pace?
Okay. A lot of these questions on these interviews revolve around COVID and change times and, advice, right? And all that good stuff. And you gave advice from a CEO perspective with regards to, what you what you do when you're filing taking a company public.
Yeah.
What about like advice to our listeners, life, work, entrepreneurship, et cetera? Like what, there's got to be a couple points you can throw out there.
I think it's important to try to know where you want to go, and I think that even if you're trying to take a turn in your career, but you don't know what that destination is, the fact that you want to take a turn in your career, that's a big part of where you want to go. And that's a big sandwich, but you're going to eat it one bite at a time. And,
you're finished that, mom.
yeah, I mean, like, and it's like, so my wife and I had the opportunity to live in New Orleans for a little bit, and 20 years or so ago now, there's a great sandwich there called a muffalata sandwich, and it's a great sandwich because it's got awesome ingredients, focaccia on top and bottom, and oil and vinegar, and I mean, like olive tapenade and pickled vegetables and cold cuts and cheese. And then what?
You're saying words I don't even know. And I told our listeners that this guy's a gourmet chef. See?
Well, I had macaroni and cheese for lunch. So
that's what I had.
We're even.
Mac and cheese, man. Choked it down. Keep going. Sorry.
From a box or yeah?
Oh no. From a crock, not a crock pot, a Instapot.
Yeah. You and Cindy are on the Instapot kick.
Oh yeah.
But it comes together. It's better not immediately once you finish making it. It's better a little later. The flavors come together, and I think that's part of, you got to take it one bite at a time and really pick apart the flavors. Pick apart, where do you want to take this career, right? Why? How do I put different experiences, different jobs, different conversations with different people together? And it's about doing that constantly. I had a great person work with me after I left the company, and they said, now your job is look for that next best thing. I mean, that's really about the time you and I started to get to know one another, actually. And that gentleman said to me, every day, if all you did was meet 2 new people, they may not find you that next great opportunity, but what if they introduce you to 1 or 2 other people? And I think that's part of the journey. And I think back to that, there's a ton of those folks who I met, who I never expected to meet in life, who I actually call today to get advice, to work with them because they are a consultant, or, they're a vendor for us today, whatever it might be. Taking it one step at a time, I don't think it could be any less important than know where you're going.
That's awesome. Great advice. So we're getting to the end here. Sure. If you were in my shoes, is there anything that I didn't ask you that, I should have?
I think everybody should ask, do you love what you do? And be able to know why in a really simple, one simple term, sentence, whatever it might be. I do. I mean, Jess, I'm busy as heck, a lot of 7-day weeks at times, taking phone calls on a tennis court, maybe, right? Unfortunately, and we have very tolerant and humble partners, in doubles play.
Yeah, right.
The
hell's he doing now?
Yeah. Right.
Where'd Jason go?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my wife asks the same thing, I think, sometimes too. But I think, I love what I do. I haven't been this gratified professionally and personally in a long, long time. And I don't think it's because I didn't love what I have done over the last 10 years or so. I think I'm that much more gratified. And I am because, while I have this opportunity to ask, hey, how do we come together as a big group? How do we pull in and invest, physicians and patients and regulators? And how do we make this successful? I also come home and I can still honestly tell the kids, hey, this is what we're doing still. We are still trying to get people better, right? We are still trying to make them stop being a patient, try to be a person as much as possible, and that for me, if we can coalesce all that together and get a paycheck at, twice a month and all that good stuff, that's a pretty daggone good day. It's a pretty daggone good day.
I'm happy for you, man. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. And thanks for being part of it too. I mean,
and thanks
honestly,
for what you guys are doing over at Gemini. It's pretty cool stuff. Where can our listeners connect with you?
I'm in the ether,
LinkedIn.
ping us on LinkedIn. You can ping me on LinkedIn. I'm a little silent on Twitter, but I watch it often every day at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
After the news, that's usually the first thing I look at. You can ping us at Gemini on LinkedIn.
Can I put a couple links in the body of this?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to send it on to you.
Awesome. I can.
Yeah, I mean, hashtag GMTX is the easiest way on Twitter handle. If they want to reach out through you, I'm happy to, talk with folks too.
Okay.
Look, as much as, and as soon as I can make the time, I try to get to as many and all the people that I can, because, somebody did that for me too. And I think it's an important part of the 8 billion people on the earth.
Gotta pay it forward, man, for sure.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Man, this is it. I appreciate your time, Jason. This has been great. I can't wait for you to get back, as you say, to the lower states here at some point soon. And keep your tips up when you're getting off the lift.
Yeah, we try. No, it's been a pleasure, Jess. I appreciate it. It's a nice way to finish up a Friday afternoon. It really is.
Yeah, I'll send you some links here once this thing goes live.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. We'll be in touch.
Take care, man. Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.